So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It is truly wonderful to see so many of you here, students, faculty, community members, and friends of Hartwick College, all joining us for this important conversation on public service, local government, and our democracy. At Hartwick, we believe that education is not just about what happens in the classroom, but also about engaging deeply with the issues and the challenges of our time. That is the mission of the Hartwick Institute of Public Service, launched in September 2023. And I want to thank my colleagues, Professors Elder, McKinney, and Chick, for their extraordinary leadership of the Institute. The Institute connects our students with opportunities to learn from leaders in government, in nonprofit organizations, and the private sector, helping them see firsthand the many ways they can make a difference in their communities, their state, and their nation. In less than 2 years, the Institute has registered so many students to vote that for the first time in our college's history, Hartwick will serve as an official polling place in this November's local elections. And the Institute has pioneered programs to provide students with free digital access to our local newspaper. And it has built strong ties to local government. So strong, in fact, that today you will hear from 4 Hartwick students, each of whom has served or are currently serving in official capacities in our city government. And Hannah, Sarah, Cooper, and Jack, we are so very, very proud of you. The work of the Institute is grounded in a simple but powerful belief, one shared by today's guest, that public service is a noble calling. And it is now my great pleasure to welcome and to introduce Governor Jeb Bush. Governor Bush served as the 43rd governor of Florida from 1999 to 2007, where he championed reforms in education, led economic growth, and launched significant environmental restoration projects. He remains deeply engaged in public life as the chair of the Foundation for Excellence in Education, a national nonprofit organization he founded, and as the author of 3 books on leadership, policy, and his time as governor. He is also the chairman and founding partner of Finback Investment Partners, a private equity firm. Governor Bush's lifelong commitment to civic leadership is inspired in part by the example of his father, President George H.W. Bush, for whom the Bush School of Government and Public Service was named. And we are honored that Governor Bush has joined us today, and in doing so embraces the finest tradition of our democracy, to engage in conversation on the issues of our time. And we are even more proud that this conversation will be with 4 outstanding Hartwick students. And together they will explore the challenges and the opportunities of public service and what it means to strengthen our democracy at the local level. So please join me in welcoming Governor Jeb Bush.
Thank you, President Mullen. Thank you so much. It is a real honor for me to participate in the School of Public Service. You mentioned the Bush School in Texas A&M. One of the joys I had was to be a professor there for a pre-semester, basically 10 days, 8 hours a day to get full 3 credit hours for the students. And about 80 students showed up before the start of the spring semester to hear about the role of state government and role of governors in American life, both civic and political. And I was so encouraged by the sincerity of these students, many of whom had come back to serve after service in the military or in mid-career, and many were young, but they all had a desire to serve their country, either at the local, state, or federal level. And I'm inspired by, I know I'll be inspired by the students in the dialogue that we'll have, because public service is so important. If we leave it to the professional politicians and to the bureaucracies, we're going to get an ugly result. But if people acting on their heart, taking the skills that they've earned in their life experiences and bring them to bear, particularly at the local level, incredible things can happen. I'll give you an example of how mobilizing support for a cause can work. When I ran for governor, I went to visit 250 schools, which is pretty hard to do since schools are shut off in the summertime. But I was cranking out like 3 or 4 schools a day. I learned a lot. I learned to tell stories rather than give people a 5-point plan. My ideas were considered radical, I guess, at the time, but people knew where my heart was. And you can do that. You can move the needle, particularly at the local and state level, if you're all in, if you totally focus on the important things. So when I became governor, we passed policies that were leading in terms of the change that brought about the greatest rise in student achievement at the time of any state in the country. But the part that gave me the most enjoyment, perhaps, was to say, how can we mobilize the support beyond state government or school districts? How can we mobilize the big and caring hearts of our state? And so I decided to do what we called a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And that was to have 200,000 mentors in our schools, particularly lower performing schools, for 3rd grade, which is the critical grade for making sure if you can read at grade level in 3rd grade, you're going to be successful going forward in school. If you can't, it's really hard to overcome it. So we measured it. We had, I think, in the state, we had something like 95,000 or 90,000 people that were in mentoring relationships all across the state. And we had an aspirational goal in 5 years to have 200,000 mentors. This is what you can do at the local level or state level. I gave every state worker an hour a week off to be, if they committed to spend an hour mentoring a student. Businesses did the same thing. State government, all the state government did it. Local governments did it. We got big brothers and big sisters involved in the Boys and Girls Clubs. We created a thing called Teen Trendsetters, which were for 11th graders to show off their civic commitment for their college resumes, to be able to mentor 3rd graders. And there were probably 10,000 11th graders that were doing that. And in 3 years' time, we got over 200,000 mentors. Nothing political about it. No one asked if you were a liberal or a conservative or a Democrat or Republican. The idea was to put your arm around a child and say, I care about you, and help them organize their life so that they could deal with the life circumstances that they might have had, to be able to have hope, to be able to realize that if they worked hard, they could achieve great things. That's civic engagement. That's not politics. And people, I think, sadly look at Washington and they think that's government and that's how it works, and I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I know you all as students that are engaged at the local level, you might be frustrated. It's not all perfect for sure, but I'm sure you find it rewarding and purposeful, and that you can get things done. And I hope that you'll stay the course. Our country is a bottom-up country, not a top-down country. We don't, as you know, we're seeing more and more, we don't like being told what to do. And we don't like Washington tell us what to do. Both sides get angry about that. But in a bottom-up country, we solve problems. We solve them in our families, our communities, local government. That's where the action needs to be. And we need to reward the people that make that commitment at the local level, and discount a little more deeply what goes on in DC. Because that's not where the solutions are going to be had going forward as a country. And my hope is that people will turn off the social media accounts, stop watching cable news, and if they're passionate about something, whether it's through government or through community organizations, get on the playing field roll up your sleeves, make a difference in the lives of people, and you'll find it much more purposeful and meaningful than anything you'll ever do.
Thank you, Governor Bush, for your remarks. I am so happy you were able to kick off our panel with that. Going next, we have four student panelists here. We are each going to talk about how we're engaged or we're engaged in public service, and then we're going to pose a question to Governor Bush. So first off, I have Sarah. Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay, hello. My name is Sarah. I'm a senior double major in criminal justice and accounting. So, when I was a freshman, I was very curious about everything. I wanted to be like Barbie, collecting clubs, careers, majors, all of the above. So, during my freshman year, I was introduced to the Institute of Public Service. I started first as a one credit internship, and then I became a paid intern for the spring semester. While I was a paid intern, Professor Elder reached out to me and she was like, "Hey, Sarah, we're looking for a commissioner for the Human Rights and Community Relations Committee, and we think you would be a great fit. Are you interested?" And I'm like, I don't know anything about local government, so this should be fun. It would be a great opportunity to learn, to explore, and also to just be in the room where it happens. Turns out, being in the room where it happens is not always fun in games. So, first up, order of business was the Women Trailblazer Awards. These are the awards held by the Human Rights and Community Relations Committee every year. If you may not know, Hartwick College makes up, well, college students in Oneonta make up about 50% of the population. But for these Women Trailblazer Award, they were only eligible to apply for only about 20% or 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 awards, depending on the year. I saw that this was a problem. How can possibly 50% of the population only be eligible for one award? So even though this room I was in was really scary, I was really young, and then I barely knew what I was talking about, I still raised my voice asking, hey, can we open up these awards to everyone? Because I did that, for the 2024 Trailblazer Awards, a 13-year-old ended up winning one of the awards, which was very impressive. This opportunity wouldn't have happened if I wasn't in this room. So my question for you, Governor Bush, is despite young people wanting to be involved in public service, sometimes they're discouraged because of conflict or because of financial instability. Do you have any advice for them?
Well, my advice is to follow your lead. I mean, you're the living proof that people can get involved. And look, there's lots of ways to help others. Young people, people ask me, I want to make a career of politics. Do you have any advice? The first advice I give them is listen to your mother because she's normally right. The second advice I give is don't make it a career. Have a servant's heart. Prove that there's lots of ways. You don't have to, you can be a successful business and be charitable and how you, a businesswoman, be charitable with the proceeds of your success. You can, through your church or synagogue, you can be deeply involved in causes that you find important, or you can be in local government as a volunteer. But it doesn't, it's not a career, it's a chance to serve. And I think that mindset and that mentality can happen for a 13-year-old, and it can happen for a 72-year-old, which is my age. It's I don't know. I think people think that you have to go. You want to be a politician, so you work for a county commissioner, and then you become a county commissioner or city commissioner, and then you go become a state representative, and then you go maybe to Congress. And 30 years later, you're a career politician. Great. I'm not saying that's necessarily bad, but what value have you created to help others? Maybe the path of service goes in a very different direction, where you take all of your life experience in the military or as a teacher or a nurse or a business person, and then share that at the local and state level, where your experiences then can be brought to bear. So I don't know. I don't. There shouldn't be barriers of entry to serve. That's for sure. But people shouldn't necessarily view it as a career. I don't know if that makes sense to you. By the way, what do you want? You're a double major. Kind of interesting mix of majors, by the way. What are you intending to do when you get out of college?
Okay, when I graduate, I want to become an income tax attorney. So the goal is to go to law school and then become an attorney.
Oh my God. I just got my accountant just sent me what I have to pay September 15th. I almost had a heart attack waiting for our session to start. Literally at 3:55, I just got this. I'm not happy with my accountant right now, but I'll get over it. We got to pay him.
Thank you, Sarah, for those remarks. I think you are a big inspiration to us all of really putting yourself in the room where it happens. Next up, we have Cooper. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Hannah. So I'm Cooper Cohen. I'm a sophomore here at Hartwick. I triple major in history, sociology, and education. But more importantly, I'm
triple
involved in
major?
public service.
How
Pardon?
do you triple major? I never heard of that.
It was a
Wow.
great decision, trust me.
Okay, I trust you.
But more importantly than my majors, I'm involved in public service here with the city of Oneonta. Last fall semester, I ended up finding myself placed onto a city task force alongside a SUNY Oneonta student. And this task force, called the Town Gown Task Force, kind of our whole goal is to see more integration, not just between the two campus communities here in Oneonta, but between the campus communities and the city community. Because especially in the years since COVID happened, a lot of the campus community just kind of retreated to their respective campuses, and there's been kind of a downturn for the city. Now, obviously, more involvement could be, quite literally just getting more people to go downtown and spend money at the businesses. But it also means letting people know that, hey, you count as a city citizen for the city, and you can register to vote for local elections. You can make your voice heard. We've hosted events, such as an event last fall where we invited a bunch of local elected officials to come onto Hartwick campus. So that way the students can, put a face to name and really have a chance to talk with those who do represent them. So my question for you, and give me a second because there's a bit of a buildup to it. Um, as a history student, I like to find myself looking back on things. And one thing I found myself looking back on the other day was the 1988 presidential debate, the second one, between George Bush and Michael Dukakis.
I was
Now,
there.
oh, that makes sense. So this debate, moderated by Bernard Shaw, CNN anchorman, Bernard Shaw was allowed to ask each candidate a question that he came up with. Now, the question that stood out to me the most was the question that he asked Dukakis. And mind you, he said this on national television. He asked Dukakis pretty plainly, if your wife were raped and murdered, would you choose to pursue the death penalty against the individual who committed said crime? Now, this question was pretty purposeful because Dukakis was very firm in the stance that he opposed the death penalty. He didn't believe that it worked. He didn't see any positive results from it. And so he said as much in response to Bernard Shaw. He said, no, I wouldn't pursue it. And I think you probably know that. Now, he stood on principle. You know what I mean? He gave him a very unemotional answer based on his principle that he opposes the death penalty. But what's interesting is this question and his answer is generally what's thought of to have lost him the campaign that year. He lost to George Bush and he didn't win the presidency. And it's interesting to me that Dukakis was punished for giving an honest answer that was based on his principles, and he didn't try to play up any emotional one. Whereas we've seen a lot of the opposite of this in recent years. You see a lot of candidates try to play up emotions to try and drum up their own side. And it's become very vitriolic almost. A lot of the times they even just flip-flop on policies just to, fit in with wherever they are. So really my question is for you, do you ever think that we can move away from this very emotional style of politics and back to maybe what it was back in the day?
So that's a great question. There is a difference, I think. His answer was the wrong answer, by the way. put aside his position, you're correct that he had a principled view about the death penalty. But take a step back. Your wife has been raped and murdered, and your response is a clinical kind of cold advocacy of your position on the death penalty. Sometimes in a debate like that, where, you know, I don't remember, there's 80 million people watching, you want to show your heart. That's not necessarily preying on people's fears or angst or emotions. You want to show that you're more than just a kind of robotic political person, that you want to connect with them on a human level. So I think the better answer probably for him would have been to pivot to say, yes, I don't support the death penalty, but had that happen, I would have brought down the hammer on the guy and he would have been life in prison. Whether it's my wife or any other's wife, we should never, you know, with emotion, with conviction, explain your view so that, you know, a normal person watching this doesn't look at you and go, what the hell, man? We're talking about your wife. You know, it's okay to be emotional about that, right? So I think he didn't handle it right. It was a kind of off the wall question. It was the first question, I think, in the debate, which made it even more unusual. My dad debated in that was 88. In 92, he debated Ross Perot and Bill Clinton, and it was near the end of the debate, and he looked at his watch, and people went, oh man, I mean, the guy's not, like, he's trying to get out, you know, like he's so disinterested in this that he's trying to figure out what the hell, when is this going to be over so I can go back being president? And wrong thing to do. Those things do matter. No, so I would separate kind of connecting on a human level with your good point, which is today we're living in a world where virtue signaling or non-virtuous signaling matters a lot. You know, going on Fox or MSNBC and scraping the bark off your opponent, owning the libs or owning the conservatives is how you win, particularly on social media. And, you know, to use a mixed analogy here, that's like empty calories. You know, that there's nothing purposeful on that, in the sense that doesn't, you know, you're not improving anybody's life. You're not advancing policies that could lift people up or give people a chance to live their own lives as they see fit. You're just banging on the other side to prey on people's fears or their anger or their angst, rather than offering hope that, you know, life could be better if we follow a certain path. So it's a great question. I do remember the debate. One other funny story: the next day, I think my dad did win the debate. The next day, we did a bus tour in the Central Valley of California, and the Beach Boys were with us. In 1988, they were pretty hot. Now they're like 85 years old. I guess they still sing. But I mean, we had 30, 40, 50,000 people in Modesto and Fresno. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
What are you going to do when you graduate with your quadruple?
That's a great question. And honestly, I couldn't really tell you right now.
You got time.
I think it's a question we all have to grapple with eventually. I will
By the way-
say I really loved the event you put on. I think that it's really important for everyone to be able to look at their elected officials face to face and have conversations with them as of right now, except we're not
One quick thing
in Florida.
about history. I just finished reading the biography on Mark Twain. I recommend it highly. Incredible.
You should try and read it.
It's about 1,200 pages, but other than that, it's really good.
That's nothing.
Okay.
With these professors, it's an easy, quick read.
All right.
Next up, we have Jack. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Jack Reichel. I'm a political science student here at Hartwick. This is actually my last semester. And I just begun my MPA, my graduate degree in public administration. Last semester and last year, actually, I had a unique opportunity to serve as an airport commissioner for the city of Oneonta. And initially, I responded to an email just because I thought the title sounded cool. Um, and it ended up being a lot more than that because a few of the projects that they're undertaking down at the airport involve some controversial obstacle clearance and other projects, which put me in the position to really gain an understanding of how local government interacts with people and specifically how to resolve or mediate conflicts, which otherwise I don't really know where else I would have gotten that understanding. Um, but yeah, so I really valued that experience overall. And I have a question for you. I really value conversations across perspectives, but today's politics feel more polarized than ever. How did you manage partisan divides during your time in office? And how can we further respectful dialogue in both public service and private life, particularly in the private equity world where political neutrality can be essential?
So I think the key is leadership. People have to, mayors, governors, commissioners, airport commissioners have to start with the premise that that we're all in it together, that you're not trying to push someone down to make yourself look better or, try to win a partisan point. That's easier to do at the local level, I think. But even there, I'm sure you had this experience. If it was controversial, the drumbeat on social media starts, and there's a lot of misinformation or disinformation that really people in public life sometimes skip over the fact that they need to be totally transparent and educate people along the way, or they're going to fall prey to this misinformation or disinformation. And so we tried to, I tried personally to communicate on the 4 or 5 things that I thought were really important constantly, to advocate, to present facts, to, I called it Nixon to China, the Nixon to China strategy. It's finding people that don't look like you, don't think like you, may not have the same views on 90 things like you, but on the one that you're working on, they do. And you bring them in as a partner. You don't say my way and the highway. Again, easier to do at the local and state level, and easier to do when I was governor, which was, a different time than it is now. Social media is poisonous. And it makes it really hard to do what I'm describing, which is find, get to yes on the things you agree on. You can fight the fight on the 99 things you don't agree on later. And the most fun part of a public leadership job is building strategies around the ideas that you have for implementation. And my experience is, if you want it to be sustainable, if you don't want it to be overturned when the new guys come in or new gals come in and overturn everything you do, it has to be broadly supported and in the broadest possible way. If it isn't, we're going to see this if, in Washington, if the Democrats Trump comes in, he basically has undone everything that Biden tried to do. And if a Democrat gets in next time, they'll undo everything that Trump does. I mean, this is not the way the democracy is supposed to work. We're supposed to, the founders actually created a system where consensus was necessary to solve the problems because we have divided government. We have 3 articles of the beginning of the Constitution, not one. It's not a parliament system. It's not an authoritarian regime. There has to be consensus in order to build sustainability. And there's so many examples of how that worked. Reagan and Tip O'Neill solving the Social Security crisis till, about 3 or 4 more years from now. And then we're going to have to figure out how to do it again. There are a ton of examples of how this works in the proper way. And I hope you stay involved because we're going to need you. The old people get off the stage pretty soon, and younger people are going to be driving the policy train, thank God. And I know you'll be doing it a lot better than what's been going on recently. I mean, I'm 72, and I feel like I'm way too young for Washington. It's not that I'm not running for anything. My wife, I've been married 51 years. I want to make it to 52 years. So I'm happily out of public life, but man, just like people clinging to power. I don't know how it is. I don't know if the people in your local government are ancient, but in Washington, like they're way too old. They need to find out other ways to make a difference rather than just clinging to power. One point I wanted to make, and I forgot to make it, related to your community and the universities that are in the community. You guys are a huge economic driver for communities. People, as the population ages, a lot of people like to move to college communities because there's a wide array of cultural activities. You all have, all sorts of things going on your campus. And the university, needs to open up their campus to make sure that the people in the community can take advantage of it. And the people in the community need to see the economic power that universities can be as a driver for, prosperity and progress for young people that want to stay in the community. I hope you all are doing that.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Jack. I'm next. My name is Hannah Gillens. I'm a junior here. I'm a double major, not triple, in criminal justice and political science. I'm actually originally from Michigan, and that kind of drives a lot of my interests in public policy and civic engagement, and especially voter engagement. And I've recently actually been appointed as a commissioner of the City of Oneonta's Environmental Board. It ties into a lot of my hopes and dreams and aspirations from Michigan, as I actually live on the border next to Canada. And on this border, we have a huge trash hill. It's actually called Mount Trashmore in my city. And it's become quite an issue and really contentious in our local politics.
Yeah.
The trash falls down, it sweeps across the streets, and it just smells awful. It smells so bad. And what really got me inspired to be involved in just anything to do with politics were my grandparents were really big advocates of not expanding this huge mountain of trash. And so was really the entire city. But I watched them zoom in even during COVID to these city meetings just to raise their voice about how they didn't like this giant mountain of trash. And it actually stopped the expansion, and it hasn't expanded since. And it was just because people in the city were able to be engaged and really raise their voice about what they thought. But my question for you is, how can local and state governments be more assertive about their feelings towards climate and environmental issues? And how can students like us really make a difference in that future?
So Hannah, first of all, what city where's this? What town?
I'm from Trenton, Michigan. It's about 20 minutes south of Detroit.
Oh, I thought you were upper in the UP. So it's connected closer to Detroit, I got it.
Yes, I basically live on the Detroit River.
So we have a Mount Trashmore in Miami, by the way. And it's actually reached its limit. And people don't want it to be expanded. And no one's willing to pay for the alternatives, which ultimately you're going to have. And then there will be the EPA, potentially could fine for the county government for non-compliance of federal law. And so what's the solution? The solution has to be, you just can't oppose something without offering an alternative. That would be my answer. And there are alternatives. There's incinerations. You could provide big incentives for rural counties to be able to use to put the trash. They'd have to be, they're going to have to be paid to do it, and you have to take into consideration the road damage and the cost of shipping. There has to be an economic analysis and an environmental one to come up with an alternative. But the idea of just stopping progress, particularly trash, we're going to have trash. It's not it's not going away. Recycle. There's a lot of other strategies to limit the amount of trash that can be coming in. And the beauty of local government is they have these tools in their toolkit. And with proper leadership, you can get to a consensus on how to deal with it. And, I appreciate the fact that your grandparents in COVID or after COVID, were actively engaged in it. And maybe they forced the local government officials to come up with options. And if it requires additional revenue to pay for it, so be it. I mean, we can't live in a place where we want everything perfect and we don't want to pay for anything. So, I mean, the answer is, in a bottom-up country, there are local solutions to this stuff. And then the state ought to be supportive. At least in our case, the state was very supportive of initiatives to protect the water supply, protect not just the supply of water, but also the quality of water. I mean, we spent $4 billion on Everglades restoration, which was the largest engineered, it was a set of projects during my tenure, and that's continued on, local, state, and federal government working together to maintain the water supply for South Florida, as well as making sure that the parts per million of phosphorus continues to drop. So they're and done with between Democrats and Republicans embracing the idea. It wasn't a partisan issue. So there are good examples. I think there's a good example of the Great Lakes. Communities all across the states that are impacted by water quality issues in the Great Lakes have gotten together and they've built, a really interesting strategy of how you deal with runoff, how you deal with protecting the water bodies over the long haul. And again, it's government, private sector, not-for-profit groups, local, state, and federal governments working together in a bipartisan way. Yeah, am I right about that? I think I am.
I sure hope so.
Well, you're not there anymore, but I think there's a big effort. Illinois, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana. A lot of these states have created a regional approach to deal with water body issues. Maybe even Canada, although right now Canada is not talking to us for some reason.
About the water supply, a recent innovation of society has been AI and creating these facilities that run this AI. And that has been using a lot of water. It uses water to cool it off. It uses water to run the facilities. And especially in Florida, you had to address those water concerns. What do you think AI is going to play? Like, what role will it have in the future? And what do you suggest happens?
Well, AI is going to play, it's going to radically change everything. And we've been talking about building consensus and where the best problem solving takes place. Creating guardrails to protect young people and to create, to protect not necessarily jobs, but to create guardrails around AI so that the damaging effects, in our political system, the amount of disinformation will accelerate because of AI. And there should be some guardrails around this so that speech is protected, but you can identify, AI-driven information compared and make sure people know that it's AI-driven rather than reality-driven. So there's a ton of work that needs to be done. And right now in our dysfunction in DC, I'm not very optimistic that it's going to happen anytime soon. As it relates to power generation, which is what you're referring to, right? The need for massive amounts of power generation for data centers and water in most places for the cooling, because these things generate a massive amount of heat. I think there's going to be, like Florida doesn't have any of these major data centers. And the reason is what you just described. We have our power is relatively inexpensive, but the water needs that are required to run these gigantic data centers are just, it's a serious challenge for us. So the states where this is taking place, and we'll end up probably with a couple of the hyperscale data centers, they've got a challenge because the grid is not designed for the amount of electricity necessary for the compute for AI. And we're talking about trillions of dollars to be invested, and there's no, I don't see I don't think all of it's going to be built because I don't think we have the bandwidth to do this. And the good news, if I had to been pretty pessimistic about AI up till now, I would say the good news is there will be innovations about how to use less water and how to have the compute power not necessarily grow exponentially the demands on power generation. I think there'll be new technologies that will allow for a better return on investment. We'll see. I'm excited on one level. I wish I was 21 because of AI rather than 72. I think you guys are going to be living in an incredibly exciting world, but I think there are dangers as well. And public service is a place where you can create these guardrails that maybe protect the vulnerable, protect people that will be displaced, protect the political system from massive disinformation that I think is likely to happen. Well, it's happening now, but accelerating.
I really appreciate your thoughts on that. I think the disinformation sector of politics is going to be a pretty big issue as it already is.
Well,
I believe
people get into dark holes. They go into the internet and they go deep into weird places. I mean, I've had people that recognize me and shout out something that's like really weird about, it's typically about my brother or my dad, not me, because everybody's DC focused. But you're like, where did you get that information? Like, dude, just like take a deep breath here. You're spending way too much time on social media, and you're being taken advantage of, and AI will only accelerate that. With there's just so many, you can put faces on people. It's just crazy. I worry about the political ramifications in the short run more than just about anything else.
I believe Jack has another question, and then we're almost done and wrapping our panel up.
Hi, I'm just curious, as a person who's pursuing a career or dedicating themselves to public service, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out?
Well, listen to your mother first and foremost. She's normally right. I would say do it. I wouldn't, again, I said this before. It's not that a career in government isn't, it's a noble thing, but you can make a difference volunteering on boards and commissions, and you can pursue other aspects of your life, and it can be just as purposeful, maybe even more so. So, and there's always the chance of getting involved in the second phase of your career, or the third phase, or the fourth. You guys are likely to have 5 or 6 jobs by the time you're 40. That's the way the world works now. And you're acquiring knowledge and experience and just things that you can share in the public arena that you might not otherwise have if you don't have a broadened out career. So my advice normally is don't just jump right into local or state government. You can be involved in campaigns. You can be involved in the ways that you all have nobly been involved as students. There's ways that you can make a huge difference and pursue public service. There's lots of ways to get engaged and involved. I hope, I don't want to turn you off on starting, first job in city government. That may be your pursuit and you want to do it. That's great. But I think what you're going to find is you're going to be doing a lot of different things by the time you've trying to figure out where your real passions are over time, and those things will change till the point, hopefully you're going to be married, hopefully you're going to have kids. There are game-changing things in your life that will happen that will change, how you view public service for sure. It may become more important in your life. Be a teacher. There's lots of ways that you can serve. I don't know. I shouldn't be discouraging you from doing what you've set out to do from this institute. But I am.
Well, thank you very much. That's about all the time we have for today. So please join me in thanking Governor Jeb Bush for joining us this evening.
Thank you all. Good luck to you.
I would also like to give a round of applause to my fellow colleagues for joining us tonight with such wonderful questions. And last but not least, give a huge round of applause to the Institute of Public Service and our three co-directors, Laurel Elder, Matt Schick, and Zach McKinney. Please make sure to check out all the events Hartwick Institute of Public Service does, and we stay engaged in public service. Thank you.